so excited to have Jeff Lovecchio here joining us on the True Sports Physical Therapy podcast. Vex, thank you so much for making time, and thanks for being a pro. We're excited to have you here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be on the show, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, dude, a ton of professional athletes think in their head, when I'm done with this, I'm going to become a strength coach. When I'm done playing, I'm going to become a strength coach, right? Now, you did that. At some point, you had that conversation in your head. When I'm done with this, maybe I'll be a strength coach. Why did it work for you?
Well, the conversation in my head wasn't maybe I'll be a strength coach. The conversation was in my head was I've only ever loved two things, hockey and training. And so luckily through my work ethic and determination and consistency and all those things, I was able to be a professional hockey player for 10 years. And I loved what I did. And I was like, I can't imagine not loving what I do. So the only other thing I love doing is training. So I was like, I will find a way to make that a career. But the reason it worked for me is bittersweet. It's because my career didn't pan out the way that it was supposed to, I guess you could say, or I was going to. So I left after I went to Western Michigan University, and I left after my junior year and signed in the NHL with the Boston Bruins. That summer, the first time I was skating, I had a terrible fall where I went into the boards full speed, completely unconscious, lost memory, all this stuff. I missed a year and a half of hockey. I didn't play hockey for a year and a half. I missed my whole first season of my pro contract.
Wow.
Thought I was never going to play again. Unfortunately, like that set me up to have more and more concussions as my career went on. I was lucky enough to play 9 more years professionally after that, but I was never the same. I didn't make the same amount of money that obviously somebody who's not healthy or, would play in higher leagues and stuff. Right. So after my 3rd year playing pro, I was playing in Utah and I got hit from behind, 6 fractures in my jaws, just a stupid hit.
Wow.
And got a concussion. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go over, finish my career in Europe, play however long I can over there. It's a little bit less physical, a little bit more of a skill game. But at the same time, that concussion was probably like 10 or 11 for me at that time. And which is, I know, a lot. I shouldn't have been playing, but it was on me. And I, did what I did and I chose to, right? Totally fine with that. So I started training. I got certified. I went to school for exercise science at Western Michigan, right? And then, so I started training athletes in St. Louis during the off season before my first year in Europe. I was like, I just want to help kids get better. So I got certified. I started training guys, and I would come home for 4 months a year, maybe 5 months a year. During my own off season, I would train in the morning. Pros were paying to train next to me. Like I wasn't even training them. It was just like they did what I did and they paid to train with me. And every year I'd get more and more kids to train with me. And the quality of player got higher and higher and higher until my 10th year playing. I trained 300 kids that summer, and guys, college, juniors, pros, kids. I went to camps and trained camps and did all these things. So that after my 10th year, I decided to retire probably a few years early because my business was doing so well and because I had already had those concussions. So it worked for me because I didn't have the career that maybe I would have if I didn't have that injury, right? So I had more time. I wanted to help. I wanted to give back. And I kind of had to, like it wasn't like, oh, my career's over. I'm sitting on 8 million in the bank, 10 million in the bank. What am I going to do? Maybe I'll dip my toe. No, it was like, I got to be good at this. I don't know when my career is going to end, when the next concussion is going to end my career. So like, I got to set myself up. I want to learn about this. And I just like giving back.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that you just said that stuck out to me was you knew what you loved, right? And you figured out Vex, and you realized, hey, I love hockey. I love training. I got to figure out one path to go in that. I think that lands with me because coming out of grad school, I thought this is what all PT was. I thought PT was just working with athletes. And I knew that's what I loved. And I went through graduate school, and the crap that you learn in grad school that is not sports rehab is immense. It's immense. Right. And I'm like, dude, I can't do that crap. Either I got to go to law school. Like if I'm not going to work with athletes, get me the hell out of here. but I think it's similar to you, is that I just figured out what I love. And I think that's really good advice. So I think that's what's unique about your story is you love what you do and you realize you weren't good enough at it yet. But you were willing to work really hard. And it sounds like, for as long as I've known you, Vex, it sounds like that's kind of your MO. You're not willing to do things half-assed. You're going to go all in. So, how did you get yourself better at being a strength coach?
Practice, relentlessly going after earning opportunities, not even going after, earning opportunities. Now people pay me to speak at events or whatever, or come speak to a team or do a Zoom call with a team or, whatever it is. I still now will go and do stuff for free, but like back then I did it for free every time. I was asking coaches, hey, let me come in and speak to your team. Let me tell them why training is important, how it's changed my life. Because also, like, you said, I do what I love. I said, I do what I love. Like, people feel my passion for training because, like, literally it changed my life. I was the skinniest, weakest mentally and physically kid. It's not like my family was rich or anything, but I didn't want for anything. I had a great upbringing. My parents were amazing. They were hardworking people and provided for us. Which probably made me a little bit soft, and then I started hitting more and more adversity in my hockey career and in my life. And I just had to battle. And I made the decision to battle and push myself and earn every opportunity I got. And a lot of those lessons and things I learned that I could like find a way to like make it was literally in the gym. Like, I learned so much from the gym and I'm so passionate about it. So it was just a lot of that. And because of that, when I was playing throughout my whole career from 16, 17 years old on, I was best friends with every strength coach I had. I asked them every question. Why? But not in like, why are we doing this? I was like, why are we doing this? Like, I want to know at 16, why are we doing that? Why are we doing that at this time of the year? Unfortunately, a lot of coaches couldn't answer those questions.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, I bet.
as that was part of my evolution of, what I call like training smarter and things like that. And I was just always inquisitive, always wanted to learn about why am I doing things and how can I do them better. And then I just brought that. That's how I was able to make it in hockey, quote unquote. And I just brought that into my training career. And the way I did it was I listened to my clients' feedback. I asked them questions, especially in the beginning. How was today? How are you feeling? And I started training my mom, and who is now my ex-wife. And I said, I want you at the end of every session, tell me like what you thought about it, like me as a coach. And I was awful. I was awful. Part of that is I was coaching my mom and my wife at the time, right? And
Yeah,
not
yeah.
a good idea.
Not a good idea.
But what I realized was I knew what I knew, but what I was saying, they weren't understanding, and I was getting mad at them for not doing it how I wanted it. But in my head, I know what I'm saying, and they don't.
Mhm.
And one of them said to me, "It's not what you know; it's how I take it." And that was like the biggest light bulb ever as a coach. And if anybody follows me on Instagram and watches my videos when I'm coaching guys, like I will say the most ridiculous things ever to get them to understand what I want and not forget it. Right. Like I want them to engage their glutes or whatever. Simply like there's $100 bill in your butt cheeks. Squeeze that bill.
Yep.
And then they're like, oh, okay, those are my glutes. Like just stupid things like
Yeah.
that. But like me being like, okay, get into a neutral spine, tuck your pelvis. And they're like, my mom's like, what are you talking about? Neutral spine?
Yep.
So like me learning that was probably one of the biggest things that ever helped my career.
It's not what you know, it's how your client takes it.
Correct.
Dude, put that on a shirt.
I know.
And I'm put that on a bumper sticker because that's the ethos of anything that works. It's
Right.
no one cares about the coach. It's about the athlete that's in front of you. And if you can't relay all that beautiful information that's in your head, you're a goddamn waste. And you're wasting their time, you're wasting your time.
Put the smartest coach in the room with half a team and me, not the like, I mean, like book smart, like, And then me in there, I'll get better results every single time through connection. Obviously, like I know what I'm talking about, but there's people obviously way smarter than me. But it's what can I get the athlete to do? Can I get them to understand why they should be giving 100 in this moment, or why they should need to be focusing on their breathing? And if I can't get them to understand that and then do it, they're getting maybe 7 out of 10 of an exercise. So
Mhm.
you can know everything and you can use all the big words you want, but if your client's not doing it at 100% of their ability, you're only getting whatever percentage out of them that they're doing. You're not facilitating that extra percentage to help them understand how, what, when, why, where, all of those things. And that's the most important thing. Mike Boyle says it all the time. Like, if you're a guy who's using every anatomical word in the world in the gym to make yourself sound smart for your clients, or just because that's how you talk, you're not a good coach, because nobody knows those words but us,
Yep.
So like, what, don't use those words. They don't know those words. They're
Yep.
paying you to help them, right? So
And that's what it's about. You mentioned Boyle. Outside of your boy Paul Goodman, who else kind of shows that to you, or what's a great resource to dive into where I can see that and learn that?
um I mean, Cal Dietz is awesome. Like,
He's awesome.
he's a savage. He ran a RPR thing at my gym a few months ago, and I was already certified in RPR, but to like meet him and hang out with him for a while and the night before and just see how he operates was pretty cool. Um, but for me, Boyle was my biggest influence. Still is. Like, not only his training philosophies changed my hockey career as a pro when I started like thinking the way more like he does and trains like he does, versus like, bilateral all the time, back
Mhm.
squat, deadlift, barbell bench press. Like, when I got away from that, I became such a better athlete and hockey player. It was insane.
Hmm.
I'm not saying never use an exercise. Every exercise has an application that you can find, but I think there's always better selections for the time, for the athlete, for their body type, for their sport,
Mhm.
but Boyle has really been the biggest influence on my philosophies, how I coach, the exercise selection. He started my brain down thinking a different way, and it changed my hockey career immediately. And I would hope, and I would say probably the hockey careers of a lot of hockey players that I've worked with over the years too.
Yeah, I'm sure. A guy named Kelly Starrett is a guy who did that for me. I
Uh-huh.
mean, he's a PT. He made his name in the CrossFit world, but his similar to you, like his passion, his ability to explain, his ability to get his information across is second to none. He's the reason I'm still a PT. So that definitely lands for me. And man, like Boyle's breakdown of a Bulgarian is
Yeah.
it's like magic. It's
Right.
magic, and there's such gold. There's such gold there. So it sounds like you've kind of spoken to it a little bit, but if you walk into a gym, outside of what you just mentioned, which is getting your point, ideas, and then movement across to your client or your athlete, how do you identify an elite strength coach?
Uh, can they get the athletes to do what they want to do? That's all I care about. I was just on a call with a former NHL strength coach, assistant strength coach, and was like literally basically saying that, like, I've told people the dumbest stories, the dumbest anecdotes, the dumbest. I'll draw the stupidest visual. I don't care. I need you to understand what I'm trying to get you to do. However I have to do that, I will do it. If you will do it in the way that I want, at the intensity that I want, like whatever the goal is, like if I can get you to do what I'm thinking, then my program that I'm running as the coach is going to be ran at 100%. Versus if the buy-in is 90,
Hmm.
now the athletes are only getting 90% out of my program or less or
Yep.
less.
Yep.
And so for me, do the clients buy into the program? Because obviously I believe in the way that I do things.
Yep.
I'm sure every successful coach has that same thought process, but I also am not naive, and I do believe there's a million ways to skin the cat. You can get great results doing a whole bunch of different training methodologies. It's just going to be, in those percentages of what maybe could have worked better. But at the same time, if the athletes bought in and they enjoy being there, I think a lot of coaches don't understand the psychology of training, maybe because I don't think you need to be have it been a high level athlete to understand this, but like buy-in is literally everything, and wanting to be in the gym training is everything. Hockey off season can be anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 months for little younger players,
Yeah.
right? So like I gotta want them to want to be in there, because if they don't, they're getting nothing out of the session. It's a waste of energy, a waste of time, and they're creating bad movement patterns and mechanics that they're just gonna go back into over and over, because repetition will do that to them. So like for me, do they buy into the coach and what he's doing? Obviously,
Yeah.
the coach has to be good.
Yeah. I think that makes a ton of sense. Now, you mentioned it a little bit. Your strength facility has really developed a reputation for outstanding culture, and it's really centered around giving 100%. That's from both coaches as well as the athlete. How the hell did you create a culture like that?
Um, it's my personality, honestly. Like, all my guys know everything about me. Like, I don't, I tell it to them how it is, and like, luckily, there, there's a whole lot of evidence to back it up. You can see what my career was on elite prospects, and then you can see me skate. And then when I tell you, look, all you guys in this room have more skill than I do. All of you. Watch me, look me up on YouTube or watch me skate out there when I go out with you guys, so they can see that.
Yep.
And then I'm like, and then look at my stats. Look where I played. I got paid to play for 10 years. It wasn't because I was naturally gifted. It's because everything we're doing in here, I did at 100% consistently every single day from 17 years old until I retired at 32. And I promise you that if you do things with 100% intensity, like I'm asking you, you will be a much better hockey player by the end of the summer, not even taking hockey stuff into consideration, how your body moves, how it functions, your speed, power, your ability to resist injuries because you're in better shape, all of these things. And I just look them all in the eye and tell them that. And then I also say, and there's a waiting list of over 100 athletes. So I've only cut 2 people in 16 years now. But if you don't show up and give me that, you're out of here, because
Next.
I only want to work with players who really want to reach the next level in their career. And that's whatever it means to them, whether that's A to AA, AA to AAA, AAA to juniors, juniors to college, college to pro. I don't care what the jump is you're trying to do in your career. Give me 100 or else you don't train here. And,
Yeah.
and that's just how it is. And luckily the guys hold each other accountable in the gym too, but that's also something I foster and I coach. You're not always going to feel your best in here. If you see a guy who's down, you better pick him up. You better grab him, because you're going to come in here down one day. Or if you're an older guy, maybe you went out and you're hungover in here.
Mhm.
I need the other guys to pick your ass up and push you on those days. So it's your job to do it on the days you see them dragging, or stuff like that.
Dude, makes me want to put my skates on.
Oh, yeah.
That's freaking good stuff. What was your weakest point as an athlete? What were your
Uh,
deficits?
yeah. Vision, vision.
Yeah. How about physically? I mean, like, I think you're talking about like ice vision, right? But physically, what were
But the
you
way, but
subpar at?
so that's something that it's another reason I think that I excel, is that a lot of coaches in the gym, strength coaches, performance coaches, they only focus on lifting weights, jumping, and speed.
Yep.
But like, if you're playing a sport like a hockey, football, lax, like an actual sport, not track and field, you don't do just that. You have to perform skilled movements. And so I incorporate vestibular work, eyes into training, depth perception, understanding space and time in our agility or our plyos or whatever. So like that is a massive part of it that can be trained and isn't, which is why I have had the success I have, because it's something that I focus on. Because I didn't have that. I got my bad concussion. My vestibular system was mangled. I had to do vestibular rehab 3 days a week at Mass General Hospital in Boston for like 6 months. And then when I got healthy and I came back, I kept doing those things and realized, oh my God, like, now that I'm healthy-ish, these are making me better on the ice. I'm
Mhm.
noticing more in my peripheral vision. I'm not off balance when I have to move my head as I'm skating down the ice. So I kind of dug into that, and I kept doing more and kept creating more drills and started bringing in more coordination things, because dexterity and fine motor control at elite sports at that level is massive.
Yeah, it's everything.
Like if you get 1% better at your fine motor control and you're playing in the MLB, you might make millions of dollars more,
Yeah.
and hit more or whatever, you know what I mean? So for me, like vision was it, as a kid, I was weak, dude. I got like, if you look at my muscles compared to my bone structure, like I'm 222 right now. I'm supposed to be like 155. If I don't work out for like a week, I'm like gone. I turn sideways and I disappear, right? So I was naturally weak. Like I had to work. I worked out 6 days a week, every single week for 16 years.
That's a lot.
I stretched every, in season, it would be a little bit, maybe it was 4, but like whatever I was going to do in season would be in season, out of season, 6 days a week, every week. I stretched every single night from 7th grade until I retired at 32, every single night, most of the time for 30 minutes, mobility and stretching. Again, I wasn't very good. It was because of everything I did off the ice, which is why I'm so passionate that I know that the better you get there, it's going to help you over there. And so like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, how much do you care?
Yeah. Okay. So let's get nitty gritty, a little clinical here. You're teaching box jumps, or you're doing some hurdle work, and you want to include some of that vestibular system you mentioned, right?
Yep.
Where do you start with that?
I wouldn't necessarily do it on like a box jump, but like if I was, dude, I mean, a simple thing is like I want you to turn your head to the opposite way you're jumping. Like as you jump, like I want you to look left, or as you land, I want you to look left, because you're going to lose sight of the ground. You're going to lose where you are in space and time. And that happens a lot in sports. But if you can get used to the movements and how you're feeling, and like maybe you're looking this way, but you're getting better and better at seeing your peripheral down here and learning how to do that while you're moving.
Yeah.
The repetition then, and then I tell them, okay, now like I want you doing that same stuff on the ice.
Yep.
Same stuff on the ice. Like bring that into, because hockey, and I'm sure football with like all the blocks and things coming from not right in front of you, like the better you are at scanning, mapping, knowing where people are, then if you can practice like through repetition, like understanding, okay, like that's what 5 feet looks like. And within 5 feet, I know I can do this, but I can't do that. That is massive.
Yeah.
When you're playing a game where you have to have skilled movements while avoid being hit.
Sure.
So
yeah. Oh, I've seen that. Like, I've seen that with my offensive linemen, where I'm working with dudes who are 330 pounds, and yes, they're massive, and their strength and their power output is off the charts, but their balance and stability is elite. I mean,
right.
Better than the 180 pounders out there. And that's incredible. So I love that you are training that and you're bringing that to the ice. Just take that example where you gave me a rotation away from their landing spot. How do you continue to progress that once they nail that?
It would just depend on like what the skill is and how I'm working on it. But like I start with simple stuff, standing still, I head still, eye moving, then progress to, wider field of vision. And then maybe something's moving and they have to track it. And then moving while your head is on a fixed object, but you're moving, but your head is moving as your body is going in a straight line. So like trying to bring all of those in, and then in every drill, it's just progressing on those, okay, now we're going to make it a one-on-one drill where like, let's say, like, for instance, instead of doing just, say you're going to do a shuttle and it's going to be a change of direction shuttle. Let's say you got starting line, cone at 5 yards, cone at 10 yards. Okay. A lot of people, if they were going to do a forward backward variation, they would just run up to the cone, stop, back pedal back, run to the next cone, back pedal back, finish with the sprint. Okay, that's great. And there is a time for that. But at a certain level, you're fast enough, like your sport isn't track. Like, so I have them line up next to each other, 2 by 2, 2 guys at a time, and your head is forward, but you've got to keep that guy in your peripheral vision the whole time. I want your head forward, but I want you to be able to see that guy while you're moving. Everyone, when they start doing this, immediately slows down by like at least 50%. It's hard, on the ice, you are doing that the entire game. The entire
Yeah.
game, as you're moving, you're mapping, you're seeing where are guys, you're turning your head, right? And then I'll do one where it's reactionary to progress that. Okay, now you're going to go on the whistle. You have 15 seconds. You can move forward and backward as within this 20-yard span or 15-yard span as much as you want, however you want, but you can only go forward, backward. But the guy next to you is going to try to be your shadow, and he can only look forward and can't he's got to use his peripheral vision. And then I make them switch sides, so they're working both sides of their peripheral vision, right? And a lot of drills like that, like just trying to find a way to bring your eyes into your movements.
For those of you who are just listening at home and not seeing me grinning like a dumbass, the reason I'm grinning like that is because you're describing concussion rehab, right? Like, and
Yep.
it just sounds like you have married this concussion cognitive neuro world into the performance space. I think that is such a game changer and such a separator and applicable to every sport.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, man, it once I started doing that and I made that part of my training, everything got better for me. So
Yeah,
I
that's
started
awesome.
doing it with other guys and it got better for them. And I was just like, okay, we're on to something here,
We're onto something.
and we just kept doing it.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it takes a lot of coaching, right? Because you gotta. These guys have never done this before, so you have to tell them and explain to them, and they have to understand what's a good rep, what's a bad rep, how do I improve on it, etc. We have a outstanding therapist that works with us named Dr. Christy Chiesa. She did her residency, I believe, up at Mass General. She's a concussion specialist. She incorporates all of this stuff into her rehab. Now it's making like a lot of sense. It sounds like that can get very, very sport specific. So that makes a lot of sense to me. When you were overcoming your billions of concussions, who are you working with? Like what profession and what really helped you?
I was working with a vestibular rehab therapist. I was working with a neurologist, and I was working with. He was a different neurologist. His name was Dr. Hee-Chin Che. I just remember his name, not a common name, right?
No.
And I would go see him for this acupuncture that it was like his own version. And he was doing it with a couple other Bruins players who were also having concussion problems. And it was wild. He would do a whole bunch of needles in my neck and my skull.
Yep.
And I had really, really bad whiplash, which exacerbated, masked, took over post-concussion syndrome as well. It's not something I found out till way later.
Yep.
Which is, is unfortunate because I think I could have been back way faster.
Mm-hmm.
But he would exhaust twitches is what he called it. So he'd put the needle in. And when I would go to him once or twice a week I did it for like probably 6 months. And my traps were so like ungodly tight that the first time he ever did it with me, he only did one spot and it took like 30 minutes to exhaust the twitch. And the first 20 times my shoulders are jumping off the table and it was almost painful. And he's like, we're going to go until it won't twitch anymore. So like I wasn't working out, but I would leave there and I would be so sore. And it was only one spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then go back the next time, he'd hit another spot. And then he started to do multiple spots because he started to relax at least a little bit. And then all the spots in my head too, which, now I know, like, if I have a headache or something, like I kind of push on these certain spots and they give me relief. And like, he taught me that with all these like needles and stuff. And so, that was pretty interesting and cool. Worked with trainers, but what really turned my recovery around, I went to University of Pittsburgh Medical Clinic and I saw Mickey Collins.
Okay.
And they were like, okay, we're going to put you on this medicine, or I was already on it. And they were like, we're going to up your dose, which helped because they found a correlation between vestibular, rehab and this medicines. Okay. So they did that. They told me something so simple when I was trying to come back, whether I was walking or riding a bike, like, don't look around.
Mm-hmm.
when you walk or when you ride the bike at the rink, when you're trying to come back, do it when no one else is in the gym. Don't look at other guys. Don't talk. I want you to put the bike right in front of a white wall with nothing on it and just look at that. Because up to that point, I would ride the bike for 30 seconds and the world was spinning and I was upside down and pukey and
Yeah.
whatever. But I was also in there facing the middle of the room with a bunch of guys working out, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to be in there with the guys. And so I started doing that. And okay, that was better. Then they had me do a bunch of stuff for my neck. Oh, that got me better. They said, you don't have to just try and come back with riding the bike, which was like the only protocol for pro hockey, college hockey, junior hockey for probably like 10 years.
Yep.
Ride the bike for 10 minutes with the heart rate at 125. If you do it the next day, bump it up to whatever, 150. And if you do it 2 days in a row and you're good, then you can skate. But if you fail on either of those days, you got to take 2 to 4 days off and then just retry it.
Yep.
So that's all I was doing for like 6 months. I go to Mickey and he's like, tells me those things about the head straight and the neck. And then he was like, you could try lifting weights because you can manipulate your heart rate better. And I was like, dude,
Where's
I could
this
have been
been?
doing that the
Yeah.
whole time.
Yep.
Because like I told you in the beginning of this thing, my only two passions in life really, now entrepreneurship is one of them, but were hockey and training. And I could do neither. So that was super hard. But so like I remember I was bench pressing the bar like super slow. Super slow, 10 reps. And then I'd have to sit there for, in the beginning, some days it might have been 5 minutes, get my heart rate completely back down, slowly lower myself.
Try again. Yeah.
Try again. Keep, heart rate monitor on, sit there for 5 minutes. Okay, let's go do a lat pull down. Like one plate on, but it was progress. It went from doing nothing to that. And literally over like 2.5 months, I went from the bar and one plate and 5-pound dumbbells to like 80% back. Like it just kind of went like this after I saw Mickey. And that's when I was able to get back on the ice. I didn't play that first year, but I got to practice one time in a real practice at the last practice of the year, which gave me confidence. And then I went into full speed training for the off season, and I went and won testing with the Bruins the next year.
Hell yeah. So it sucks. It's kind of disheartening, but I hear this story all the time. And a lot of times it's with concussion. We have a number of concussion specialists within our practice, but dude, this happens with patellar tendonitis as an example, like where I'll get athletes coming in. It's like, I've tried everything. Okay. What have you tried? Well, I've been to PT for the last 6 months. It's no better. What have you done? I've been on the bike. I've stretched my quad. I'm like, okay. It's all about how do you acclimate to the stressor, right? And so it's easy with patellar tendons, like to load up the tendons properly, or Achilles tendons. It's harder with the brain because we don't see it, right? And we don't know how much we're loading it, but that's what you're describing. You're loading your vestibular system in what you were just describing. Even with what we call dry needling, which what you were calling acupuncture, it's like, can you identify those muscles that we know they're attached to your eyes? Like, if you dig your hands on your superior obliquus capitis at the base of your neck and flutter your eyes back and forth, you'll feel that muscle twitch, right? So how do we reverse engineer that and say, let's deal with that muscle and see if that calms it down? There's so many ways to do it. By the way, it sounds like what you were saying before, which there are a million ways to skin a cat. There are a million ways to rehab, fill in the blank, definitely concussion. You got to know where your athlete is and what are their deficits and how do you attack them like a sniper instead of just trying everything.
Yeah. And the biggest thing with concussions too, and this is something I tell everyone, like never go to your MD if you have a concussion. As long as it's not an extremely minor one where it's like barely one. But if you have a concussion, get to a concussion specialist. It's night and day what you're gonna get, like nobody. And I was in the NHL. Nobody talked to me about what I was eating. And so me as like the guy who wins testing and like that's who I am and my identity, and that gets me the chance to be at the higher level. I'm like, well, I haven't worked out in 3.5 months, even though I can't be eating poorly. I don't even want to overeat because I want to be ready to come back. I don't want them to test my body fat and I'm at 20, whereas before this I was at 6 or 7, which now too low knowing what I know now, but that's kind of where it was. And so like nobody talked to me about nutrition. My sleep was god awful. I should have seen a psychologist. They did offer to have, and I'm not blaming the Bruins. Like this was just concussion
That's where it was.
protocol. It
Yep.
was just so archaic. Luckily, like that year and the year before and the year after, like 2 or 3 of the biggest stars in the NHL got bad concussions. And so everybody started putting money into concussion protocol research, all this stuff. So it's so much better now. So I'm happy now for the guys who have to go through this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the NFL had a lot to do with that also, right? Like,
Right.
they're just worried about their dollars and cents, and
Yeah.
that's a massive issue. But you make a good point with these pro athletes, how they need to find a team outside of the organization to help them get better. Everyone you just mentioned, yes, Mass General, yes, UPMC, they're not necessarily in-house.
Right.
We've had a lot of success with that, of guys finding us on the outside, and we are almost as passionate as you are about what we do. And so you got to be working with people that are dying to learn what's next and what is the best out there. You don't always find that in the locker room. How do you feel about NHL from a strength and conditioning perspective? Are they at the bleeding edge?
I think more and more people are yes in that sport, but hockey is so dynamic. Like every other sport, for the most part, is played on the ground, and you train on the ground.
Yep.
You run the ball in football, or you run in track. It's the same way you run in the gym when you're practicing sprints. But the way that you sprint in the gym is not how you skate. It's completely different mechanical motions. And hockey is so demanding. You have to be very good at a bunch of things. You have to have speed. You have to have power. You have to have balance. You have to have agility. You have to have vision.
Yep.
Like you have to understand depth perception and space and time and how to manipulate those things. And that's where I was going back to saying, like, the reason that I've had so much success and trained so many players that trust me is because we're working on all those things. I'm not just making your muscles bigger. I'm doing that, but also all these other things. You know what I mean? And it's funny because I was a meathead when I was younger, like all I did was lift. I just loved lifting, just lift, but then I realized, like, oh, well, if I lift, a unilateral dumbbell bench press more often than a barbell bench press, that makes me better at hockey. The barbell bench press is negligible, but because, that there's nothing like that in hockey. Like at least, you're having to resist rotation. You're working both adductors, your glutes, your back, your core. You're literally working everything while you're doing the exact same pressing motion.
Yeah.
And so it's just like very simplistically, that makes way more sense, than those old school ways. Now, I think way more hockey trainers are getting into that. Hockey players have gotten smaller because training has gotten smarter. When I was playing, guys like were training like football players, and they moved like football players. Well, now there's skilled guys can be smaller, and they're making it, and so they're faster, so they're pushing the pace. So now, you don't need to be 6'2", 240. You need to be 6'2", 215.
Yeah, you got to be
right, and agile. You got to be able to keep up with that little water bug who's skilled as hell and can stop and start on a dime and all those things. Because if you can't catch him, you can't hit him. Doesn't matter how big you are.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say hockey's behind, but like younger hockey still is. In my opinion.
What's the best way to train that skate form in the gym?
Again, it's so like different than anything you really do.
Tell me what you
like,
do. Yeah, what do you do?
Slide boards are great, like for something that's similar. We do lots of like 45-degree reverse lunge, forward lunge, lateral lunge. I mean, rear foot elevated split squats. Hockey is played on one foot at a time. Like you skate one leg at a time. You shoot for the most part on one leg, especially at the higher levels. You're getting hit while you're changing your stride. So it's not like you're stuck in the mud like a back squat. And again, well, I hate back squats. I don't have anybody back squat, never have, never will. But if you're training more unilateral in nature, your body just gets used to being 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. And I'm not saying I don't train bilaterally ever. We do, but I'd say my off-season programming is probably 70-30 unilateral to bilateral, maybe,
You sound
or
you sound like Boyle.
right, right. But in season though, I do flip that. In season, I flip that to being way more bilateral than unilateral because I want it to be easier on their system. I don't want their adductors super sore. When you're doing anything unilateral, you're going to be using your adductors more, and we use those a crap ton in hockey.
Yep.
And I want them to be able to get in and out of the gym faster. In season, all I focus on is strength, mobility, prehab, strength, prehab, mobility.
Yeah.
That's it. They're getting all, and Boyle said this on my podcast, fill up the empty buckets.
Yeah.
And I've quoted him forever since that. It was probably 5 years ago. In season, I want to fill up the empty buckets. Out of season, same idea, but now they're not skating. They're not getting all the unilateral work. They're not getting all that stuff. So we work on that type of stuff in the gym.
That's really smart. Like the way you look at periodizing that and the way you look at attacking that which they're not overusing to avoid the overuse stuff. You mentioned skating one leg at a time, one skate at a time. What's the best way to mimic and enhance shot velocity in the gym?
Oh man, that's so hard. That's such a tough question, actually, because
Thank you.
Shooting is, again, and shooting and skating are very similar, and that technique is everything. You can see, like, one of the best players in the NHL right now, Jack Hughes. He's this big. He's this big, but his stride efficiency is unparalleled. His balance on his skates is unbelievable as he's making all these moves, right? So, like, you don't need to be a monster. You need to be strong, obviously, and resilient and all these things. But technique is so much of hockey in the way that you shoot because there's so much technology in the skates and the stick. Sticks like are not like when we grew up. I just became a partner with Bauer, the biggest company in hockey, which is like a dream of mine. And I was just out at their headquarters in New Hampshire like 2 weeks ago, and I'm holding all the new sticks, and they're all telling me, like, when I played, I used like 105 flex, and now guys are using like 75. It's like a noodle, but it's because they don't have to put as much energy into it because they're using the technology of the stick how it should be to their advantage. So there is a lot of technique with it, but we work, a lot of carries for the grip and forearm. We do some kind of loaded carry 2 to 4 days a week, all summer long. Almost every day we're doing some kind of loaded carry, whether that's single hand, both hands, waiters carry, overhead. I don't care what it is. We're going to do some kind of carry. A lot of forearm stuff. We use fat grips. We strengthen, oblique slings and how you're going to move when you shoot and things like that. Acceleration, deceleration from the lower body, because you kind of like, you don't jump into a shot, but you kind of like explode into it and push down on the stick so it pops off. So a lot, my philosophy is 90% of training across most sports is probably pretty similar. It's like that last 10%, and then like the individualized portion within that 10% for what your role is in the sport.
Yeah, like position specific. That makes me think of, I just had an athlete come in with a UCL strain. He's a pitcher. And so I was working with one of the therapists who's primarily working with him, and he was doing carries. He sounded like exactly what you were doing. I said, why don't we grab, instead of doing a dumbbell carry, why don't we grab 2 plates, split that weight in half, and have them pinch it, right? Because now we're getting all the way down to your pincer grip. And we're getting all the way down to the little muscles that are controlling that flick as that curveball comes off the fingers. Make him own that, control that in the gym. So that's what you're talking about. That's that last 10% of how do we get position specific? How do we get sport and then position? So I'm sure that carries over to kind of what you guys do. How about a goalie? How do you get goalie specific?
We just really work on, like, people like hate on like buzzword terms online in like the training community. But when you go back to realizing what, obviously there's idiots out there don't know what they're doing and saying stupid things. But again, we go back to what we talked about in the beginning, especially with Boyle, like not dumbing it down, but making it digestible for the people who aren't us, who are obsessed with training and the body and all those things. So like for me, like we try to bulletproof their ankles, knees, and hips, as best we can. We're going to work on a whole bunch of stuff to load them in positions maybe they're in, work on their tendon strength, a lot of ankle work, a lot of hip work, a lot of T-spine rotation work, a lot of what I call a quiet upper body while their lower body is moving. So like when players are doing plyos, when you skate, you're kind of throwing your arms to help facilitate better movement, more efficient, but also like it kind of throws you forward and helps you a little bit.
Sure.
With a goalie, if they're sliding across the net and they're opening up their arms, well, now they just opened up holes to get scored on.
Mm-hmm.
So when I do plyos with them or like a lateral skater jump with the players, I'll let them throw their arms, if that's what that day calls for. Goalies are holding whatever every goalie has a different hand position. They're in their stance and they're doing the lateral skater jump, and I'm screaming at them, don't move that glove, don't move that glove, or whatever. Don't, your blocker moved. I just buried on you. You just lost the game. I went post, don't you move that blocker, as they're jumping, and I want them to get very comfortable with that quiet upper body because that's what they do the whole game.
That's awesome.
So, with goalies, I care, and goalies, like I care way less about strength. Like obviously I want them strong when everybody's strong, but like I care more about completely owning their movement.
Yeah.
I want them to I want you to own your movement because they have to be precise, because if they're moving and a limb moves, you're opening up a hole where the puck's going every time.
Yeah, we call that end range resiliency, like when we're talking about being all the way outstretched. So I think that makes sense. I recently had a guy named Morgan Cox on the pod. He's a long snapper for the Titans. This is like year 14. You talk about movement specificity. Dude does one thing, but it's exactly like you said. His T-spine, his spine needs to be dead quiet while his arms are rapidly accelerating through his zone. That doesn't show up in a lot of sports.
Right.
And so how do you get specific with, okay, yeah, the guy's coming in for golfer's elbow, but how do you force him to own his T-spine maneuver and then load his wrist flexors to overcome the pathology? I think that's where strength and conditioning meets physical therapy, sports physical therapy, and that's what makes a great sports PT. So you hinted at it a little bit. Tell me, what is the number one thing that hockey strength coaches screw up?
Wow. At the higher levels, or like looking at hockey in general?
Hockey in general.
I mean, they train them to be good in the weight room or football.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, I love training. The people who don't, people who want to chirp like the way I do things, and it's because of what I put on Instagram. Well, I can't show everything we do every day, especially because I put more volume on my guys than anyone I know. I can't show everything. Like it's ridiculous. Not afraid to, it's just I can't, right? And so I show stuff on my social media for players who are at home that they could do something at home, or it's like, well, I know in your gym you're only lifting, so I'm going to show you everything that you're not doing that maybe you could watch and try and see how impactful it is. So like that's kind of how I do things during the off season to show what we're doing. But they when I was younger, I was lifting to be better at lifting.
Yep.
Even though I had a great strength coach, and some of the stuff we did, obviously there's translation from GPP, obviously, right? Certain point that stops, I think. But what I was doing was leaving so much on the table, and I was winning testing everywhere I went, especially body weight to strength ratio was off the charts for a hockey player, but it stayed in the freaking gym. I'd go on the ice. I wasn't nearly the strongest guy on the ice.
Yeah.
I'd fall over. I'd go to hit a guy and I'd fall over. My balance was always off. I'd go to hit guys and I'm falling and they're not, even though I'm 10 times stronger than that guy. So I was like, why? And actually I went to Washington Capitals dev camp after my freshman or sophomore year in college. And Jack Blatherwick, who was the strength coach for 1980s Olympic team.
It's not a bad resume.
Yeah. A lot of people call him like the godfather of hockey training. He's wrote books and stuff. And I didn't know who he was till I got there, looked him up, and was like, oh my God, I picked his brain the whole week. He said something to me that also changed everything for me. He said, if all of your training can be done in a phone booth, you're not training to be a hockey player. And I was like, okay, my program at college is squat, bench, deadlift,
In a
pull-ups,
in a phone
dips,
booth.
all of it in a phone booth. I could probably do all of those at the same time in like 3 phone booths put together, just not moving at all. And I was like, wow. And at that camp, the first day we had testing, and I was probably like 190 at the time, and I think I benched 275 bar to chest 7 times.
Jesus.
I had the second highest bench. There was a guy who was a meat. He was like probably 220, and he benched like 280 like 5 times or something, right? Barely beat me. He was also older. I'm still pissed off I lost.
I see that. I hear that. I hear that.
But so I went, and then after me, Nicholas Backstrom goes. He was just drafted 5th overall that year. He had all this hype on him. The media was just all over him the whole time. He could not bench press 135 once.
I love it.
I've told the story a million times, and I watched that. I went, 5th overall pick, going to be in the NHL this year. I think he actually, after that season, his first year, I want to say he won Rookie of the Year in the NHL, or he was at least very close. For sure got over 1,000 points in the NHL. This guy can't bench press my warm-up weight. What is he doing that I'm not? And what am I doing that I don't need to do that he's not doing, where he can't bench press the warm-up weight?
Everything.
Right. And then Blatherwick says that to me in the room, and I'm like, okay. And then I signed in the NHL the next year, and at the airport, I bought Boyle's book or online, and I read it cover to cover in a day and a half. And I immediately was like, this makes more sense. This is the gap. Like me just doing all this stuff in a phone booth. I'm going to start doing this. I did it that summer. Well, when I was healthy, and bam, unbelievable. And I still won testing, and I didn't use a barbell for bench or back squat or deadlift one time ever again.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That sounds like, I think Kevin Durant couldn't get 125 up. In his combine testing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't freaking matter. I have this conversation with the NFL guys. Like, there's a bar you got to pass. Like, there's just a marker you have to do. But once you get over that, like, spend time on your sport, on your skill. Dude, that's a ton of outstanding information. I love the way you look at the game. I love the way you look at strength. Everything kind of makes sense as to why you're so goddamn successful. So good on you, Vex. Here we go. Lightning round. You ready? The Eric Cressy lightning round.
Let's get it.
I know you're a big fan of sayings, Coach. What's your favorite saying?
Get more, be more, baby.
If it's not get more, be more, what is it?
Life gives to the giver.
Oh, that's freaking good. Life gives to the giver. And what does that mean to you?
The more you give, the more will come your way. I believe in karma. When I was younger, and I first started in my room doing push-ups at night when I was young, and I was a little weakling, I ripped out from a magazine a military ad that said, life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And I taped it to the back of my door. My mom was pissed because it ripped. She's like, it's going to rip off the paint. And I was like, I need to see this so I do my push-ups. I've always been like, I need sayings around. It helps me, right? And I started to live that way. And give more, be more, my clothing brand, and it's in my gym and everything. Like, that kind of came as a spin-off of Life Gives to the Giver. I stopped saying that saying because I don't believe in negative words. I think words have a lot more power in your own head than anyone realizes with your own self-talk. So I think, and takes from the taker, leaves it open to put it out there that, well, if I ever do the wrong thing, it's going to screw me, And yeah, obviously I believe that, but I just want to leave it on a note in my head that makes sense to go forward, never leave anything to go back. And that's where I kind of translated over to give more, be more.
Well, you talk about giving with that answer. And before we started recording, you were talking about some of the programming that you're putting together to make all of this awesome information accessible on Give More, Be More, or gmbm.com. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited because it's taken me a year. I am not technologically savvy, which is hilarious because I have a pretty large online training platform now.
Yeah.
I actually just signed up my 21st team or organization for this season right now, so that's pretty cool.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a grind, and it's really, really rewarding. And what I'm trying to do with that is make great training extremely affordable to people who can't afford a coach in person, right? You can still have great training. Obviously, the best option is a very good coach. Most people can't afford that. Most teams can't afford that. And so that's what I'm trying to do online. And with my website, I'm just trying to, put out as much free information as I can. I'll have a blog on there. I'll probably have a vlog on there sometimes. Another thing too, man, when you're a pro athlete, you get everything for free.
Yep.
Like, it's just part of the gig. It's awesome, right? And then you stop playing pro. And if you're not a huge name, nobody cares. You get nothing for free anymore.
Yeah.
And so as I kind of grew my social media following, and my podcast is really big and grown and stuff, people want to work with me. Companies want to work with me. And I'm always like, well, I got to get a deal for my clients online, in person, and my followers. And so on my website too, it's like all the companies that I work with, where you can get a discount, because like I reach out to them sometimes. I'm like, yo, all my guys use Lactigo, for example. I don't know if you ever heard of this.
Yep.
Dude, like, unbelievable. I didn't believe it would work. I was like, no way this works. And every single one of my guys that uses it is obsessed with it and is 100% in their head convinced it works. That's all I need to hear. And so, that, okay, you can save money on that, or gym equipment or whatever. So part of it too is like, I kind of want to create a community where I can help people through information, having fun. They can sign up for my online training, or when I eventually start doing like courses for coaches, you'll be able to sign up there. You can reach out to me directly on there, and then, whatever.
That's awesome. And I can't wait for you to add True Sports Physical Therapy to your list of brands.
Let's
Dude,
go.
well, I mean, we'll offer the ACL course that we just launched at a discount. We will
Hell
give
yeah.
free online assessments. If they mention Vex, I can't
Love
wait.
it.
I can't wait for that, dude.
Love it, bro.
Okay, that is awesome. And it sounds like an awesome mission. By the time this thing airs, gmbm.com is going to be live. So I'm excited for all these sports PTs to figure out what a good hockey strength coach is. Okay, next lightning round question. Ready? What's the book that has impacted you the most?
The Secret.
The
Or RSF, Relentless Solutions Focus.
Love it. Okay, if you could grab a beer and let's say and train one current professional athlete, who is that?
Oh man.
That you're not currently training.
That I'm not. Okay. I was gonna say one of my guys.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would go with a guy who's not an athlete anymore. I would go with Joe Rogan.
Because?
Well, I mean, the conversations with the people that he's had conversations with are like the smartest, best, outside the box, inside the box, every possible thing that you could ever like want to talk about or learn. Like, he's had people on that have done that. And I think that he's so open-minded and looks at things from a zoomed out lens where he can kind of take in things without having a lot of bias. And I think it would just be very cool to hear about all the great people he's met and the conversations he's had.
Yeah, he is so good at it. He is such a good listener. It's crazy.
Yeah. He's phenomenal.
It boggles my mind that I mention, I'll be talking to an athlete that I'm working with. I'm like, oh, did you listen to Rogan? They're like, no, I hate that guy. I'm like, how is that possible? Like he's so incredible. I've learned a ton from him. That's a good answer. That's a really good answer, Vex.
The one I used to say when people ask me that, but it was because of his mindset. He doesn't have it anymore. Was Conor McGregor. It obviously, because he won. He won because of his mindset. But like, I mean, I think he's awesome and all that stuff. And the way that he did things, he outsmarted the game, and like, he was calculated and all these things. But his mindset when he was the guy was, I mean, you could see it in his eyes. Like, I remember the first time he lost, the fight was about to start, and I was watching. I go, he's going to lose. He's 100% going to lose. He did not have the same look in his eyes leading up to the fight. He was not in the same headspace. You could see it. And it was just like, but when he was the guy and he hadn't lost, like, I don't care if they sent a bulldozer in front of him, he would run through the bulldozer. Like, I believe that because he was so dialed and believed in mind, body, everything was all one, and it was going there, and he will not be stopped. And for me, like, mindset is everything. And so that was just like, when he was on top, it was like, I've never seen anything like that.
You think he just got complacent?
I mean, how do you not, if you become a 500 millionaire or whatever he had going into the first fight with what's his face?
Look at Mayweather.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, but he's it's boxing and MMA are so different. Like you can boxing is obviously technique is an MMA, but there's so many different ways that you can get caught that like sometimes technique, like because there's so many techniques, anything can happen. But with boxing, if you're a technical boxer, you're so obviously anything can happen. But like Floyd Mayweather is the best technical boxer of all time. So like he is so much better than every other guy at not getting hit
yep.
that like it's easier for him, I think, than an MMA fighter to continue to win at that type of pace. I'm not taking anything away from him, but
Yeah, yeah. I think those are good points. Okay, last one. What's one trend you wish would come back?
in the world or training,
The world.
Jinko jeans. Do you
Don't
remember
say.
those?
Of course, I remember. Unfortunately, I remember. Of course, I remember wearing them with a chain wallet. So yeah,
Yeah, I actually don't want to come back, but I always see memes about Jinko jeans, and obviously I wore them. So
obviously warm, dude.
yeah.
If fanny packs could come back, if
Oh, bro, I got a
white
bunch of
sneakers,
those.
of course you do.
Yeah,
Yep.
I played in Europe. I took my style cues from all the Europeans. I came back here at first, and guys would be like, "What are you wearing?" And then a few years later, it starts to catch on. But yeah, that's hilarious.
Well, and you played pro hockey in Asia.
Yeah, I played. So when I left the US, I played Italy, Norway, Austria, Norway, Japan, Japan, Austria. And in Japan, the league was actually the Asian League. It was Japan, Russia, Korea, and China. So we flew everywhere. Like it's the best I was treated in my whole career, other than in the NHL and when I was in camp and preseason and all that stuff. Best I've ever been treated. Like it was amazing. There's only 3 imports allowed on every team, so it's actually pretty hard to get into that league. A lot of guys that were in the league when I was there had NHL games and had good careers, and like that was kind of towards the end, go there, get paid well,
Yeah.
play in a little bit of an easier league, but it was still like a challenge. The game was way different than anywhere else I've ever played.
And what were the fans like?
Hilariously quiet,
Really?
sit in their seat.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
And me, like, dude, I like to have fun. And when I left the U.S., one of the things that probably because of my concussions and just the way I was brought up, I was like kind of I was always nervous around authority figures, like with teams, GMs. Not nervous, but like I just wanted to like do the right thing all the time and
Sure.
yes sir and shake their hands and stuff like that. And other guys are like, yo, what's up? And like
Yeah.
that, like I wasn't comfortable with that. But when I went to Europe, I was like, I'm gonna be myself. I'm gonna be comfortable. And with the fans, I'd always have fun. Always have fun with the fans. Cause I also realized that without fans, there's no leagues.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm very passionate about. Players need to treat fans not better, but like they need to remind themselves that you're making all this money because they're in the seats. And if they're not in the seats, you don't have a job.
Yep.
You're in the street playing street hockey, bro. So like, you're not like better than everybody out there, you know what I mean? So when I would do interviews and stuff, I had a dish that I loved there called ebi ten soba. It was like fried shrimp with soba noodles and an egg, and I would eat it every pregame. So I would just in interviews all the time, like on the ice, if you were the MVP of the game, which I was a lot. What's up?
Obviously.
At home, I'd get a microphone and I had the translator there to say whatever, and then I would just grab the mic and yell "ebi ten soba," and then they die laughing. But it was ridiculous, but it was fun.
That sounds like a good time. This has been a blast. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your outlook. I think sports PTs just got a lot better at understanding strength and conditioning. So, Vex, I really appreciate you, man. Give us your handle. Tell us where we can find you. Let us know. Tell us.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate the opportunity. I love what you guys do, and I take a lot from PTs. A lot. Like, you can't avoid injuries. Like because they're gonna happen, right? You
Yep.
can't avoid all of them, but you can mitigate maybe the severity by doing the right things. And I literally use a lot of PT stuff as my prehab,
Sick.
like all the time, like not all the time, every day. Like that
Yeah.
is a staple of my training. And I think that's why, again, you can't get all the injuries out of the game or anything like that. But I think that's why so many guys that train with me are pretty healthy throughout the years, right? So
Yeah.
I love PTs. I love learning from them. So thank you for having me on. My Instagram handle is just my name, at Jeff Lovecchio, the word love, CCHIO. And my new website drops here in the next day or two, and it's gmbm.com. My podcast for hockey, if we got any hockey people out there, we've got to be at 1.5 million downloads now.
Hell yeah.
I haven't checked in a minute, but we're probably approaching 1.5 now, and it's called the Hockey Think Tank Podcast.
Sick. And dude, I've spent the last 3 weeks doing deep dives onto that thing, and it's been awesome. One of our PTs, Danny Willie, is like, "Oh my God, you're having Vex on!" Like,
what's up, Danny? I said, "What up?"
Oh, it's awesome. Thanks for being an inspiration. Thanks for being a great interview. Thanks for your time, dude.
Absolutely, man. Thanks a lot.